everyone. Welcome back. I'm Sarah Christensen with One Sage's View Astrology, and we are on the final video for the season 3 promo tour for Bridgerton, talking about Luke Newton and Nicola Coughlan. And this video will be focused on Nicola Coughlan's astrology and Galway as the conclusion for what I've been focusing on for this promo tour. And you can go back into the playlist to go look at the astrology for the London premiere, since from Galway they would be journeying on to London and for that part 2 premiere. So you'll find that video below in the summary for those links. But it is in the playlist, but I will make it easy for you to jump back there if you wish. So we're going to be focusing on Nicola's astrology for Galway. And of course, Nicola in 2024 is 37 years old. So she's in a Jupiter year, Lord of the Year for traditional astrology, for Annual Profection for second house. But what's interesting about the Galway astrology and the transits of the moment are that we're looking at Nicola having a stellium of Gemini, planets in Gemini, and a stellium in her 5th house of creativity. 5th house is also the house of children, and that then is opposite her Sagittarius of her 11th house of friends. And so there's a lot of energy in the moment for her and what she's registering. And Jupiter by transit is a part of that stellium. So it is offering, the seeds are dropping basically for maybe her future insight about something, and how the moments in Galway are seeding something for both of them. But for Nicola, it's 5th house creativity, what they may be talking about and sharing and discussing, because Gemini is a lot of social. With air signs, and especially mutable signs, things are changeable. Things are in a very fluid, in movement. So important about Galway in the Gemini stellium for Nicola is that I think so many things are being seeded. And I kind of think about her 5th house of creativity and future projects that are likely going to be realized, and some of them aren't announced yet. Like at that moment in time, around June 7th of 2024, I don't think we knew yet that she was going to get picked up by the bigger agency, because that was announced over in the summer, and that she would also get picked up by the next movie that would be more of a dramatic movie. I think that is Love and War, I think is the name of that future movie I think that was announced over the summer. I'll have to go back and pick up the dates. But it's important to kind of consider that they might be talking about future projects when they're together, and they may also be talking about, because that's her 5th house of creativity, and that might be something that they are speaking about, or they are just reflecting over the buzz that was happening in New York and what they've experienced so far on the promo tour, and sharing stories of that experience, but also sharing with the family about what happened behind the scenes and on the set at Bridgerton, and kind of reflecting on that. That's also possible. And but there's definitely for Luke, which I discussed in part 22, is that he has so much energy focused on his South Node, and that's kind of pulling out the friendship and the perceptions and things that are happening on his own consciousness and within himself, that then may also be expressed outwardly in conversation. But some conversation is when you first meet people is very sharing stories and things like that, right? So it's kind of like that's happening, but at the same time there's bonding that's going on, and the bonding with Nicola bringing Luke hometown and to see her mother and to meet her mother, and then how that presents with meeting other parts of the family as well. So that's important. Also, that during the promo tour, we did have the Jupiter and Uranus new synodic cycle start when they started the international travel. That would have been April 22nd. But that's happening, that synodic cycle started inside Nicola's 4th house of family. So there's something brand new emerging as it relates to that we might not see until another whole Jupiter cycle comes back around and lands with Uranus again, but it won't be in Taurus again. It'll be in another sign probably, because by then Uranus will be in Gemini. So the next combination of Jupiter coming around, that's 12 years out, and that will be 2 signs away, I think, for Uranus. It won't be in Gemini, it'll be, and Cancer is ruled by the moon. So for Nicola, there can be something with that connection and having that synodic cycle about her moon, and something unexpected kind of significant for her in that period. That will be a future video, because that tells me that there's something really important about the Jupiter seed that is dropped at the period when they're connecting in Galway and bonding, and how that then expands something else, and also can speak to something of a future event, right? Because Uranus is involved. And to me, there's something extraordinary within that. And I'll bring that out in a future video. Because Jupiter is also the Lord of the year, I also think of just the pearls of wisdom that Nicola has gained in this year. And there's the Pearl recent promo that she's done with, I think it's Tasaki, hope I said that right, at that event when she was with Yeren Ha, and that was recent. And there's pearls of wisdom in there, but that's one layer of symbolism, but there's also Aphrodite symbolism within that as well, and I'll discuss that in the Aphrodite video. But it's kind of like how valuable I can see that Jupiter is in its manifestations of what it's kind of revealed for Nicola in this year. But she's had also some things that she's become aware of as it pertains to her 5th house and the Gemini energy, and things that were kind of really big when it came to the London premiere and what happened at the London premiere evening, and then what that transpired over the summer, and other things that she's learning as a soul in her own evolutionary path. So I hope that has become more apparent from exploring the astrology, because we've seen kind of some of the nuggets along the way that I have shared in the astrology, is that each moment brings forth something in their experience. We see it and observe it as observers, but it's also that they experience so much, but some of it is consciously as they walk their path, but at the same time there's something else happening at a deeper level, and things are getting integrated into the unconscious mind, or brought forward for conscious awareness as well. So it's kind of both happening, and you kind of have to peel the layers to get to the gems. And I think that's important. Psyche and Eros, of course, started off this fun, playlist of exploring these two and what the energy was, because when I first decided to create a video inspired by another creator, it was looking at just how much Eros and Psyche seemed to be beaming through from just the first view of it, and then how it just kept picking up energy, and over the promo tour what was picked up as well. And so Eros and Psyche was my inspiration to even get started on creating these videos, and I'm still learning about Psyche and Aphrodite and Eros and symbolism of Greek mythology, and the mythology, I would say mythology / story of Eros and Psyche, of what I've learned. And I will bring that forward more in another video, but I can definitely see how by going through this exercise has enlightened a bit more for me about the divine timing of things, and the value of seeing that some things are conscious, some things are not conscious, and yet we can still see things emerging because they are we can see it in astrology from the timing of the archetypes when they're making connections, right? And there's a value in knowing that. It's almost like observing something outside of time, because right now I'm recording this on the first week of December, and by the time it gets through editing, that'll be another couple of weeks probably, because the timing on my editor is about 10 days. But it takes a little bit of time to get to the end result for this to upload and have you guys viewing it. So what I think is valuable is like we're talking about the promo tour Galway, which was in June 7th, and what might have been the insights from that. But we're doing it in this moment now in December, some point in December, when you're actually observing this and listening to this and making connections that will bring it into that now, whenever that now is, right? And I've been contemplating the interesting flow of time and when we are looking at something, because I can't always do it in real time. I know TikTok tends to be where things happen and drop really fast, and on Instagram when people are sharing stories and then there's a buzz about it. But that's like, yeah, that's the reactive energy by them taking an action, right? But it's more that when you start peeling back and then you look at like, oh, okay, there's a certain energy quality and there's things that are being stimulated within the planetary transits that's telling you something as well. And I hope by doing these videos, you can see that there's something to become aware of, make more conscious from exploring astrology about, why is that? Why is it behaving that way? Why are they doing or getting those things announced on those moments? Or maybe the trajectory of that certain event and what that brought, right? So there's like a value in exploring those insights, and then the value of integrating the wisdom from knowing that. And that is an interesting path to walk, because there's a lot of moving parts. But at the same time, it's amazing because I learned this, I guess, when I was doing a study of my own dreams. And I had a book of dreams with dates of the dreams. And I went to an astrologer who did that dream work plus astrology. So they were skilled in both. And what I found fascinating about that dream work was that it didn't matter that on that time period, I think I did that for 18 months or something with this person, exploring the themes of the dream so I could understand the symbolism and understand my own consciousness and what it was moving through. But it wasn't just when I had the dream, because then I'd have some kind of level of awareness of the moment I woke up from the dream, wrote it down, reflected that moment, but then went into my pile, into my journal, the stack or whatever, and then taking to that person a couple years later saying, I want to explore these dreams. And then the moments that we're looking at the dream, then having new insights in the new moment and having archetypal energies supporting that or highlighting something. That's like, oh, now I see. And so that, I think, is really important also in this exploration of the astrology, because all of the videos that I've done so far, this is the 23rd video in this series, right? And I also had one little snippet of something I started. I think it was November 25th that I did that little tiny video searching for the book of this book, because I needed to go buy the book because my library did not have it. So, because I needed to go read something very, very important about Cyprus, because the Cyprus detail was so important to me. It kept pinging me. And it's like, I got to understand why the Cyprus detail is so important, because of the Colin, of the storylines, and something that's like reflected in the mirroring of Colin and Penelope, and then what Nicola and Luke seem to be navigating also in the real world. And so it's a bit of an exploration, and that kept pinging me because it seemed like a super important element, and I couldn't believe how much detail is in the book on Cyprus. And I made it in that little video of that I had to pursue that. And what's funny is, well, maybe not funny. It just shows you how astrology works, because it was my own astrology feeling the intensification of Mercury stationing to go retrograde that day when I was in pursuit of this. So, and it's funny because it really didn't dawn on me until later that evening when I got the book and I was reading it. I'm like, wait a minute, today's Mercury's going retrograde, stationing to go retrograde. And it's at 22 degrees and it's sitting right between my sun and my Venus. And so I just was like, okay, that's on me. We're not always aware of the transits until, we go look. And sometimes, and unless we have them embedded in our memory from, maybe watching, the forecast for the month or something like that. But I don't always carry that immediately in my brain. It kind of takes a few hours because I have so many other things going through my mind at any given moment, right? So maybe you're the same. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because I think it's important that it doesn't matter always when you're going to look at something, because the moment that you're looking at something, and this is very important for horary astrology as well, because when the astrologer then looks at the question that someone is asking a question, maybe they got something in an email, but it's the moment that they sit down and say, okay, am I going to take this? Am I going to wrestle this one and figure it out? That's the moment that they take the horary. It's not the moment that the question came in. And I think that's important, because that's kind of astrology from a divination standpoint. And the only way you can divine it is when the diviner goes in to look at it. So it's the point of observation when you look. And that gets into other things of quantum mechanics because of the experiments that have been done on quantum, I guess, when the particle and the wave, like when you observe, and that whole scenario. And I can put a link to that as well. I mean, that's fun stuff, but it's connected, but in a different kind of way. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this astrology for Nicola, and that you gained some insights about their connection in Galway and the importance of going home, or her returning home. And she's got Luke with her. There's an expansion of understanding their bond in this moment. And there's also something about, there's a duality part of the equation here, because there's so much in the stellium of Gemini, and Gemini is about duality. It's understanding duality. I mean, explore duality, the subject of duality and non-duality, and you'll understand what I'm talking about. And it's very complex. It's not something that we get overnight. It's a bit more something to meditate on, study, explore. It's that kind of a big thing, right? And that things take time. As I say, is let the cookies bake. They're not done baking yet. And I think for what was happening in Galway, the energies and the seeds that were being dropped at that time, the cookies are still in the oven and they're still baking. And I really think that we're going to see other things manifest from whatever was transpiring from that rebonding and with her family, because I really think it's the past storyline coming into a moment again. Luke with the family, this time also in that bonding moment. And what transpires from that? We will see what transpires, but it takes time to bake and for it to show up in the reality. And I hope you have enjoyed this, and let's get started and looking at Nicola's astrology in Galway. Let's go. So Nicola's chart is really important because she has gone home and she's brought her dear friend Luke. I almost said Colin again. I almost did it again. So she's brought Luke he met her mother. She introduced her mother to Luke while in the Galway premiere. There's a video of that, and we see the sister-in-law. And, so the energies, are expanding her creative self. And we have a lot going on for Nicola in the air signs during this time in Galway. So we have a stellium in Gemini, which activates her Chiron, and also activates Black Moon Love in her chart. And it's important to keep in mind that there will be themes about the shadow material of love relationships within that can spill into an experience that's coming, and that she's bonding more and more, and so that gets closer to someone she cares about and is more likely to want more, even though she may have not expressed it, because she's been guarded, because it's work, but it's also she's guarded herself from being in love throughout 20s, and because she never mentions. Now, that could be just because she's super private and will never discuss it really with interviewers, and uses maybe the last time I was in love was 9 years old, because that's the more, maybe it bears the truth that the last time I was in love was when I was 9 years old. But when you're 9 years old, this is a different kind of love. I mean, really, you have crushes. You're not truly fallen in love as an adult. And so there's something important to bear in mind here. So when Nicola falls in love, and if she's truly not been in love, then she's had relationships that have lacked a certain depth of and emotion and desire to them that really pulled her in. And some people can have, lives that, it's like, well, I just haven't landed on anybody that I really super connect with where that would be a bonding thing. But because of her past life storyline, and the Venus is the ruler of her South Node in Libra, there is something that she's returning to understand about her relationship with friends and those relationships, but also then what does she pull in relative to the seventh house of commitment? Now, some people are like, well, there's no planets in the seventh house for Nicola. What does that mean? Well, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean that she has the sun in the 12th house. It means that the essence of herself definitely has a focus on others, but it's something quite buried. She cares about status, but it's something within the unconscious mind, not necessarily something that she will consciously say, yes, I care about the status of someone, how they are, XYZ, but truly that's in her, the essence of how she looks at it. Like that person will need to have a certain status symbol to them for her to feel, that's Capricorn sun. The Capricorn sun will also expect that person to have a very strong work ethic. And if that person doesn't have a strong work ethic, I can guarantee you she will be showing that person what that looks like, right? So that's absolutely. So if Luke Newton was ever slacking on the job on Bridgerton at all, she would be the one by example showing, let me show you, I've got this, and showing him an incredible work ethic, as she's building. That's Capricorn's going to be building something milestone by milestone by milestone, because and it doesn't really look at it while it's on that traverse of the mountain towards the goal. They have to get to like a point and say, I made it this far, but then I'll take a moment to look back, then off I go again and off to the next. And truly by the time, they're 60, they'll look back and say, okay, I can see where I've made some progress, but then off they go again. And more goals, more things that they want to create and build and achieve. That's just part of the essence of Capricorn. And when the Mercury's there, it has a logical approach to it and how I strategize that and gets excited about the work that it does. It's great, right? And if you're a creative person, that's a lot of projects. So while she, has a friendship, if she commits into the relationship, that, seventh house, but it has to have the essence of who she is and fit and alignment with how she thinks about that at a very, very deep level for her to go, okay. However, I'm going to say, there is this element of Luke's connection with her. Again, I've mentioned this before, but I think it's important to point out again and again, Saturn. Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. Saturn is the ruler of Aquarius. So Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius and traditional ruler of Capricorn. And when that's the ruler, there is a balance of time, but that is also, it may take time for her to connect with something and make it real as it relates to relationship, okay? Because her sun is the ruler and her sun is in Capricorn, okay? So it will always take more time than people even can fathom. Because people are like, really? It should be done. If you have a lot of mutable energy, you'll be like, I expected that to be yesterday, or that kind of dynamic. But anything with Saturn takes time. You have to let the cookies bake. They have to, And there's also, at the moment that all of this is materializing for her and they're in Galway, Saturn here is right next to her Jupiter, but it, I believe, was going to station retrograde at 19 degrees in that June. Yeah, 19 degrees, 25 minutes. And so that Saturn is basically going to be sitting on that 19 degrees hot spot for all of, at the end of June, pretty much, it started off June at 18 degrees and then, just tipped over by June 7th to the 19 degrees. And so it stays at 19 for over a month, like for the rest of June and for the bulk of July of 2024. So that's that karmic thing that's agitating her self-confidence. It's also I'm going to work harder, and she does achieve, because of the hard work that she did for Bridgerton, because of the hard work she did for, kind of the building of Dairy Girls, Bridgerton. Then she also landed Big Mood. And then Big Mood was landing and launching for their promo right before Bridgerton. She was overlapping in the production, but she was also overlapping a little bit with Big Mood's release as well, because that was on the social media. So there's all this duality stuff. Two. Not only she plays two characters inside Bridgerton, but she had Big Mood kind of like, bringing forward kind of mental wellness and issues of that she portrayed in that as well. Very much in alignment with the air, the quality of the air, the quality of the Gemini being activated that time of year, but also the karmic piece of the Saturn, because Saturn can bear a lot into the equation on someone's astrology when dealing with mental health and things like that, because Saturn, when it's really in a hard aspect in someone's inside the natal chart, but then how it activates things in the transits, it can lead to, melancholy and depression. And then we're aware of it, the more then we're able to walk the path to navigate to, a sense of self that's more balanced through what we do in our response to that, right? How we take care of ourselves during those periods of time, because it requires oftentimes actions that the day-to-day grind does not support, So Galway for Nicola has so much that's activating for her for South Node, and the South Node ruler connected to the Chiron, the Sun connected to the Chiron by conjunction, Mercury, the ruler of all that in transit, activating all that. So fifth house, very active, but because she is a air rising sign, it is supporting more for her life. It seeds more for her life, more than Luke. Okay. So, and Luke is just, when they're together, it just amplifies the energy, right? Each of them has their own combination of things, but in this moment, I hope that by seeing the air in her fifth house, that accentuates, even though it's having a moment with Chiron, there's the potential that all of that is going to help her heal something from the work that she's done. So let me kind of walk you through. So Saturn is the work that you do and the mastery of a skill you bring, and then you're sharing it at a moment when it's matured and ready to release to the world. That's the manifestation of something into the reality. That Saturn brings in a moment where Chiron's being activated, so Chiron will be activated in these moments, but it's also got all of this energy if she walks the walk, talks the talk, and does the thing. And she's going to have a comparison of different energies for sure, but it also is energy that all that does have this amplifying of herself, the mask that she shares with the world. Jupiter also in the transit is moved to make a trine with her ascendant. That is hugely uplifting for her. All right, even though Saturn has come in transit to her own Jupiter, and she's having to contain some of her feelings about what she might feel about something related to the overwhelming feeling. She might feel very self-confident, but her self-confidence can take a ding when she's dealing with the future, the June 12th events, and even what she had to deal with at New York and was behind the scenes a bit, right? I think that's important to point out, all right? We pointed out before that moon is out of bounds, so it's super powerful. It's more chaotic. It's got a lot more energy to it. It's eventually going to move into Cancer, and Cancer is in her, it'll be more feeling, but it's kind of like, because she's an Aries rising and she doesn't have a lot of water outside of the Jupiter and the Scorpio at the top of her chart, it can, as it moves closer by degree, the moon, when it moves into Cancer, can give her a feeling around something and her self-worth, and she'll have to move to secure herself more because the feelings will come out more. But that's moving in that direction, right? And then eventually it'll go into Leo, and it'll be more about who is that person in the Leo. Right, that's Luke in this situation anyway, and being very visible. But the Saturn has the restriction, it's the limits, it's putting the restriction or having to go with the flow of things and navigating that in a freeform kind of way. But that Saturn also amplifies that T-square in her chart, right? So very strong T-square around self and other, or herself and her self-worth and her friends. And the Jupiter is, it's kind of got an explosive feeling to it because of that. It's contained, but also has an explosive kind of energy to it. So a lot going on. And then the comparison of this and that that Gemini brings in the duality, the learning about duality and learning about what you think you've got it. Like this is the thing, is like what I talked about her Mercury before. Her Mercury in Capricorn is very logical. It will operate from a logical perspective, but it is tucked away in the 12th house. So it's very strong at doing the work behind the scenes to show up in a way. What happens over time, though, this is the time balance that I'm talking about, is that you can get bonded with people and you can care about them deeply. And all of a sudden your heart is opening, your heart is cracking open in a way that you didn't maybe think logically about, but it's absolutely happening. And you're wondering, well, how, I thought I had this all, figured out in my strategy, but the strategy is going over here because of emotional connections, okay, that are real and cannot be contained in a logical way. Like, the intelligence doesn't come necessarily from, like, if you can acknowledge where you feel about something, but there can be blocks that people just have to get help to work through around parts of themselves that are more feeling in nature, or something that's related to the self-confidence. I mean, think of all the stuff that in her early career she was trying to navigate, and especially around some of it being around her age, like going for roles and having her age be a certain number, whatever. And it's like, okay, she's going after roles that are for, teenagers, and she's in her 30s, right? Having that, have to temper with that because she has a youthful appearance. But it's also about body image and what the standards that have been set by who in Hollywood or elsewhere in terms of what is being shown on film, or and so having people criticize her in the play that she did early in her career and other things, and she's had to work through those, of course, to get to her own sense of self and operate in a way that is, I am what I am. And I'm good at my craft, and you either enjoy it or you don't, and just have that kind of sense of self that is grounded, and, it is what it is. And if, there's all types of things that need to show up on the screen for us to appreciate all aspects of life. So, but a lot of individuals who are unique in how they appear to us can go through that criticism as they, pursue something like acting, and where they're very visible. So, and that, she will definitely face that again when she's, on some interviews, and how people language certain things about, her being vulnerable, or as she says, showing off or whatever, to present her, present my full self, in episode 5, right? So, and giving 0 F's about it, right? So there's that. And that's why people adore her and appreciate what she does and who she is just as a person. Another thing about Nicola in these moments, because she was very visible with her Gaza pin, or ceasefire pin for Gaza, during the entire promo tour, which helped highlight that atrocity that's happening in the world, and her standing for the social, the focus needs to be on something like that important alongside when she's promoting, because she knows she's going to be in the visible, she's going to be visible to millions of eyes, and, standing true to self. And this is something that in these moments is the Sagittarius of her chart is someone who's going to show up like that, with Saturn in Sagittarius, being someone who is committed to speaking about something and a philosophy about something. The Uranian is, I'm going to do something that will require that I might get disrupted by something, because of that. But the Saturn is also, I'm committed to it. It's almost like through the transiting Saturn in Pisces she's acknowledging that she's so self-confident that she can put herself in the crosshairs of, the public forum while she's in promo about a very sensitive subject for some people who, I don't know, this world is such an interesting and challenging place all in the same, and it's she's standing for something that she believes in, and that's also Sagittarius, right? And I think that, it's just a unique thing to see all the aspects of Nicola coming out. Galway was interesting because we got to see a side of her in her home city, and just where the root of her is, and her moon in Taurus, that to me is like Galway, and her strong mother within that context and seeing that loving relationship, and then her introducing Luke to her mother and what that meant for her, and it was something that was loved by fans as well. So I think Galway is interesting, just as I had shared in Luke's chart, because it's both like the present moment, kind of a fruition of bonding to a certain degree, bringing Luke home to her home city, meeting mother, that's moon, and the security of that, and the sense of self that's grounded in that, right? So bringing him there, and in that there's a bonding that's happening that it kind of brings more what I call tacky glue to the relationship in a way that it's hard to describe, but it's the kind of thing when you go and meet someone's family, it's bonding you further. You're getting connected to the root, and you're getting connected to the fourth house of somebody. You're seeing someone's fourth house. That's the home, the heritage, all the things, and you learn more about the person. And then in that participation with that person as a friend, you're going back into your own home and reflecting on that piece and what's secure, what's been secure. Because for Nicola, in the difference between Luke Newton and Nicola from the parental piece is, I know that Luke's mother was married to someone, Luke's father, but then divorced after his sister Lauren was born, and then and then she remarried years later. But that gave him a different experience about what was secure or not secure about mom and dad and home, right? And depending on how they navigated that relationship as co-parents. So part of Luke Newton's healing around his own fourth house family stuff, and the parental axis is fourth house and 10th house, right? So one of the parents is, there. But the relationship, I believe, I don't have explicit details, but I understand that in some of his travels, he's gone to see his father, and in that process is probably going through some healing as he comes into this new level of fame, but also learning about himself, learning about his father, because that's oftentimes the Saturn and the Sun, and both of those are in Luke's 7th house. So the things that he sees in other people are actually very much tied to Luke's father to be reflected back to him. So there is a mature perspective, and I think that's the mature relationship and friendship he has with Nicola. And then if there were immature behaviors that were part of the difficulties that he experienced when he was very young, that would show up in other people. And the betrayal piece that he would have in his unconscious mind that possibly went down between his own father and his own mother. And so Luke is learning so much in his life experience about himself as it pertains to other, and what he is getting in that loop of information between himself and other. And he's really glued into that and focused on that. And so I think it's really valuable for him and his relationship with Nicola, because he's seen someone not only in their public persona as Nicola has presented herself, but also as a good friend who he's worked with side by side. There's a trust that has been, over time built by, doing the thing and then really doing the acting and the roles that they played for season, all the seasons, but definitely for season 3. So there was, stronger bond because of, I trust this person, I'm really good friends with this person, and I've got her back and she's got mine. And so Nicola is such a key person, especially from a Saturn type figure, because of her work ethic and but she's also got the ability to detach from at least some of what he's observed. I think that is something she can present probably pretty well publicly, but behind the scenes and in her own close space, I think she's probably more in tune with like sharing those emotions, those deeper emotions, those things that are way more vulnerable with really close people. Some are for her friends give us hints about that when they're sharing things. And, that's Jonathan. I couldn't remember his name on another video that's Jonathan, I believe, because they have a friendship that she's had since she's become famous, right? So there's something to that. So Nicola going home in this event through the promo tour is not just for the promo tour and for Bridgerton. There is something that Nicola's soul is gaining from the experience, which to me, it's almost like the divine orchestration of her going home, and there's Luke near, in the vicinity as dear friend, and the bonding that's taking place, but also the healing that is there, but also that it will get to that point, but then it'll crack open again. And for that, there needs to be a new healing. Does that make sense? So it's the bonding that's important. And then there's this kind of disruption that happens June 12th. And that's the karmic wave breaking that Luke needs to navigate and work out. But Nicola is participating because souls participate on soul contracts with people. Soulmates, okay? And soulmates, there's also soulmates plus karma, and there's karma mates plus what kind of healing, but you're not necessarily going to continue a path with somebody, but you will heal with the karma mate, maybe by how you respond to something with them, and move on from it and not return to that per se, right? I think that's important to point out, because karma mates, you're not always going to, if you reframed a relationship in a way and you evolve your consciousness, I think there is that you will not go back to that because you are healing it. But question is here's an interesting one. Some people have remarked that karma is like the cause and effect, and your karma is coming due, right? It's causing, I don't look at it like that. It's more like you have a pattern and it's hurting you. And if you don't heal that pattern, that will hurt you again. And then you will hurt other people within your trying to navigate it, right? So Stephen Forrest, my master teacher, who I went with for my AP program to become an astrologer, I think he mentioned it like if someone stole horses in a previous life, it wouldn't be necessarily that someone's going to steal their horse in this life. No, it's more likely when they learn that they can steal the horse, they're going to steal again, so it's that's the habit, right? And so that's what a soul is coming back. It's going to repeat the thing. But if you don't fix that and learn that you just can't steal the thing because there's heavy consequences that come with that, then you have to bear the burden of that, right? And maybe you do bear the burden of that and you go to jail for stealing a car, So it's that kind of thing. So people who have difficult karma because of relationships, some of it can be the difficulty of betrayal, and then jealousy is interwoven in there because it's oftentimes that betrayal's at the bottom. So there's the fear of abandonment, the fear of not having that thing, or that thing is going to go away from you. So that there's that fear. So love wouldn't exist, right? So when you try to get out of fear and return to love, we have to be vulnerable to get there, though. We have to remove the blocks that allow us to love, and that's the thing, to truly be open. Yet I think Brené Brown talks about this in her some of her work, and some of her more prominent videos, where she talks about vulnerability. Some of the strongest people, she said, had the best boundaries, and they were really vulnerable and open. But because they had really good boundaries, they could be. And I think a lot of people struggle with this, me included, in my 20s and up until about mid 30s. And then I'm like, okay, I'm getting this better. And, and it's something I, completely have spoken at length for my daughter about, the most important thing, critical thinking, my dear, and learning about vulnerability, and learning about to have an open heart, but at the same time, you have to be able to say no and mean it and stay there, and that can be hard based on what you have been conditioned to in when you're younger, and then how you try to figure that out as an adult. So I hope that is helpful, because there are so many different elements that we can pull on the astrology on each of the promo tour, but Galway was so unique. It was wonderful to see them sharing the moment and kind of just like having the period at the end of the sentence from the bulk of the promo tour until they got to London, because London was very unique as it launched everything for part 2 and all the things that happened then, the day before. But Galway just had that quality, just kind of warms the heart, and to see them, I kind of like, that's when I think about the potential if they have a committed relationship in the future. I kind of imagine like what that warmth might have felt like in Galway. Even the energies were to contain some things, because still at work, still my co-lead, the co-lead, Nicola, I think, had an opportunity to warm to that and know what that felt like. And maybe Luke did too, even though that might not have been forward in the consciousness at all. It's just, you have the ability to reminisce about that because you experienced it in person, right? So there is going to be, a lot more merging for these two, for Nicola and for Luke, as, the outer planets like Neptune, which I've discussed, is going into Aries, and that will change things massively for the world and definitely for these two, because of how it lands on his Venus, very close to his Venus, but it lands on her Mars first. So her action and instinct will have this influence within something that she's not controlling. It's something that's like, it's organically happening from within her, but it's on the Neptune. It connects her to something bigger than, right? So that is more other realm, and maybe coming from the unconscious mind a bit, because her own Neptune is in Capricorn at 6 degrees. And when Neptune moves from Pisces to Aries, then it strengthens the square to itself. And so there's themes that happen around when people go through the process of the Neptune square Neptune. We all have that, and it brings out stuff. So it might be how she approaches the part of herself that is behind the scenes, but also with her friends, how she might conduct herself. So there is that. So it's important to, stay tuned, because there's going to be a lot more astrology that's definitely picking up and going to be influencing their connection in ways that are almost undefinable, and yet they're very, very, to me, like new chapters, really significant. How soon we will get to bear witness to that will be interesting. I wonder if something will transpire where we can actually see. I definitely think it has some things to do with her career, but it also has something to do with how she communicates and her siblings. Okay. And then, other things that transpire within that frame and that context, because it's about Mars, and Mars receiving Neptune by transit is pretty significant. But it's not until Saturn and Neptune come together and make a conjunction in early 2026, where there's a new cycle there, that really the new cycle is now moving forward in a big way, because Saturn brings it into the material, meaning it's definitely in 3D, it's definitely happening, and things are actively being the pressure from Saturn to have a result of some sort, or to manifest something for it to be very visible. And that might be pretty tricky for Nicola, because Saturn in Aries on Mars, there's something to navigate there. And so it could be that she completely expresses the bulk of it through a particular movie that she's doing, or a series that she's doing. I know that there's the one that she did land. It's already been announced that she got the part, and she plays a mother who is trying to rescue her daughter from a Middle East country. And I don't know exactly which one, a part that she got. And so that to me fits very well with that theme, and what action above and beyond, and the strife that happens with that journey that she will take for that film. And then also her Venus is in a fire sign, so then that will be amplified by that energy. So that to me kind of makes me wonder about the connection about her own relationships and what happens in travel again. So when she goes on tour for other promo tour, what happens? It's going to be interesting in 2026. I'm telling you, there's a lot that's coming that I don't even think, when people think immediate, I want to see something immediate. They don't understand like the bigger timeline. And the bigger timeline is where all these seeds have since 2019, since they met, truly, but definitely had a lot of things that were dropping into their conscious through connection in 2024. And then things, how they take time to bake and how take time to materialize into whatever. A lot to do with career. So a lot of it could just show up in the career perspective. But I really think because there's Venus involved, I really wonder about the relationships from the friend and how that might change up. Because Neptune, when it goes into Aries and connects with her Mars, is in a trine with her own Venus. And so that Neptune in a trine kind of ignites the passion in a new way. And it's a new chapter related to passion and how she perceives it within herself and then expressed. So that will be really interesting. And then, of course, another outer planet is Uranus. And Uranus will move and shift it's been going through Taurus for some time, but it will kick over in July, I believe. Is it 2025 July or is it 2026? I think it's 2025. Yeah, it's July of 2025 when Uranus enters Gemini. Now, that is really an interesting date because when the Uranus enters in 2025 in July, that will be opposing her Venus. And so if the relationship with someone else has been in the background at all, that goes through a kind of a separation piece. Is it Luke? Maybe there's a new chapter with something completely different. That's a possibility because Uranus is like, well, guess what? Or there's another moment of you're not getting to control this thing, and there's something of the divine energy that's coming in and creating something new because something new is ready to be born. So the question is where is it on that line? And that's why I kind of wonder about people who I want it to happen right now, and it's like, well, not me. If really want something long and committed, it would be like, let it go its natural organic course, and whatever is going to be is going to be. But at the same time, they both have individual things that they have to process and go through. And some things take time and long conversations and whatnot, or changing up from how they are on set together, where they work so close together. Now that her career is in a whole nother stratosphere with CAA as her agency, that can lift her off in new ways. And so how, it could be that it's going to be other points in time where she's going to be connected to Bridgerton, but in the role that they give her. I don't know if they do another thing with Bridgerton. I don't think so, but maybe they do because they're so popular. And that's those outer planets. I kind of wonder about that, and that Pluto transitioning over their angles is so key to me. It's still happening, so there's so many moving parts, and that's why it's so hard to read exact forecasting trajectory because of the outer planets and the transformation that's taking place. And we still have to deal with the free will is very much part of the equation. So if after Neptune makes that pass over her Mars, which it'll do it 1, 2, 3. It'll do it 3 times. So there's really a softening going on related to her Mars. And then I shouldn't say softening. I should say there's some kind of influence that heightens it. Yeah. Neptune in Aries is unique, very, very unique. It's like fire on the mind. And so it can really bloom incredible outcomes. Yeah. But there's something that she has to take a moment to integrate. That's why when it sweeps through 1, 2, 3 on the hits. So there's something very important to that. We are in a period of time where Mars, which is a very important planet for her, is in extended period in Cancer. So it's moving through her 6th house. So there may be things that she is doing relative to her habits or what may show up related to her mom her mother, because that's Mars and Cancer, and something related to her family, because the moon for her is in the fourth house, so something with the family, maybe going and visiting them more frequently, and those kind of things based on what her time is in movies versus when they were the leads for season 3, they were super booked in time to get prepared for the filming for the season 3. But if they're just here and there in the parts, but not as the co-lead, they're not co-leads, then it's not as strenuous of a work schedule. But then she overlays in other projects as she's done. And I think it was the Magic Faraway Tree that she's in, and will probably do promo tour. I'm not sure, maybe later this year. I'm not sure. I'm not sure when that's coming out, because there might be a lot of CGI with that one. So there's a lot still to unfold, and it'll be fascinating to watch Nicola in her career and in her relationships, because of so much movement of the outer planets on her angle and key planets. So yeah, it'll be very interesting to see. And another thing with the Saturn, when it goes into Aries, then it's also trine to her Venus. I must say this, because that is a potential for a commitment to be made. So yeah, you probably want to know that one. When is Saturn exactly going in to Aries? Let me look that up real quick, because let's see here, because it goes, it's going to have the first they call it ingress. The first ingress is May of 2025. That would be May 25th is the first time Saturn enters into Aries, and then it will move. So end of May, beginning of June 2025. And of course, there's a huge movement with Uranus into a new sign in July of 2025. But then Saturn will station retrograde about June 13th. Is that right? Yep, June 13th of 2025. And so when it's stationing, that's when it's really active on her Mars. And then we'll come back over it by retrograde motion in August, late August, and early September, the first day of September of 2025, and then go back into Pisces. So things kind of go back into the don't know, and there's some veil around it again. And then back. Of course, Saturn takes time when it's in retrograde, and all the way back around November 28th, I think. And around November 28th of 2025, then Saturn stations direct 25 degrees of Pisces, and then moves forward. And so then it'll reconnect again back into Aries in February of 2026. And so that will be the 14th. So February 14th, Valentine's Day, will be interesting in 2026, because the Saturn will re-enter Aries and then make a conjunction with her Mars. And then for the rest of February, that will be amplified. And that also will have the Neptune there's an outer planet influence that is not something that she controls, but the Saturn is something that she can work with and navigate by how she operates with friends, because her Saturn is in Sagittarius. What she does, she might be doing some things pretty significant. She might become an ambassador of some sorts because of her power and communication in the public eye. She'll have so much more influence. And it's growing and growing. And then, because in January of 2026, Neptune actually re-enters first, and then Saturn comes right after, and then they make the conjunction. I think it's on February 21st or 22nd when they make the conjunction, and that is a new synodic cycle. And I will cover in another video about synodic cycles, because that's huge. And it's so huge and it's sitting on her, it's sitting on her Mars, and it's sitting on his Venus. And it's like a new synodic cycle with a new Saturn-Neptune conjunction is just massive. So there are some things that are still coming into view for them related to that. For her career, because Mars rules her career house, even though her midheaven will have a lot to do with friends in her career, because her midheaven is in Sagittarius. And through her influence, she can help them also by her Jupiter being in Pisces. And her Jupiter in Pisces is like brings in wealth. So yeah, fascinating, right? I could just keep going. I probably am over 2 hours by now on this one, but Galway is super important. And there were several, so many seeds dropped in the connection during that time, and being at her root does something within her own sense of self in that exchange and sharing that part of herself, not only with Luke, but then whatever was filmed and shared with us through video, either through people filming it that were there at the premiere and that introduction, but also those interviews and things that came out post part 2, and people kind of scratching their heads about, what happened on June 12th that evening. And then, wow, this such a stark contrast, right? But that's the process of the universe setting it up. Set it up, universe. I want to do it again. And having the whole thing laid out, and you go through a process to evolve something. And they both have something to evolve, but it all is a part of that equation. And we could argue a bit here that Nicola's family, Nicola's moon, Nicola's 4th house is a very important part of the process of that evolutionary intention for her in her 3rd house of more direct communication, how she stands out for her communication, those kinds of things. 3rd house, right? Perceptions, very important. And then her 9th house South Node is, now remember, South Node brings back a storyline to work out, but also there are benefits and blessings that come from the South Node as well, which she has with her friends as well. So there's both, right? It's not all negative, difficult karma that is unsurmountable. Sometimes when you turn the corner on something, the blessings just seem to keep coming. Right. So, you got to look at kind of like, okay, this is my life has this carved out, but, I've got to really work hard at something and navigate through that. And I think about the hard work that she has put in, so far. And I'm excited to see what else she will put in her work, but also her voice in the world. It's so needed right now. And I love that about her. So I'll continue showing my appreciation and following her work and seeing what she does and enjoying all of that and her creativity. And it inspires my creativity and what I love to do. So grateful for having, what we know about the rising signs to have this sharing. And I hope you have enjoyed this. Be the end of the promo tour detail, because you have to go back up to go to the luncheon premiere to go look at those videos. The next videos will be about the symbolism of Aphrodite Swans and what I pulled on that in the very early part of, or in the mid part of June, when things were landing and how much was being revealed through the swan symbolism all in one moment, which was kind of, to me, the message from the heavens about the symbolism of not just the Psyche and Eros, but the Aphrodite's role, both as Aphrodite as goddess, Aphrodite as playing a part in the Eros and Psyche. And I had to go and read some books to kind of get a deeper dive on that, not just of, oh, that's so much power coming through right now and it's being shown through this symbolism, and the power outside what we would say is in this kind of year of 2024. It goes into other time, and I'll share that with you. Okay. I'm looking forward to it because I've got to gather all the images and the time details and put that all together and weave that in for the next video. So that might take me maybe a week or two to finish all of that and share that. And by the time it's done editing, it might be something that's released probably sometime in November, based on all the other ones that come before it that are in editing now, that I've finished recording the raw video, but that do need editing. So thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week. And until next time, bye.